Year 2000, 15 to 16 years old. My dad, I always thought my dad had a special knack. A special kind of love he has for me. He knew how to express it in a really good way. My dad had this special knack, and it was introducing me to things and having me learn things that most people my age didn't learn. And it always ended up being the right thing that just always was a benefit in the long run. Now this example I'm about to tell you in this year was, he introduced me to he gave me his camera that he used his whole life, and it's an advanced camera called a single lens reflex camera. This kind of camera allows you to take customizable pictures. It allows you to fool with different settings that allow you to adjust different intensities of light, so you can take different kinds of pictures with different light in different shutter speeds. So the pictures you can take are fully customizable, and I loved it. I thought it was so fun and so fascinating, and I started taking tons of pictures, and they looked really good too. As a result, I wanted to make another book. I wanted to make a book that I could add some beautiful pictures in. So I decided it'd be fun to make a book about power lines, since I used to be interested in power lines in the past. So I decided to take a bunch of pictures of power lines from the area in Michigan that used to interest me. So I made an atlas. I had to include all these different kinds of power lines in Michigan within the utility of Detroit Edison and Consumers Energy. And kind of like my frog books, I made kind of a guide with all the different pictures of different types of power lines. This, as a result, the book was really awesome. My parents loved it. It looked really nice. But one thing happened as a result that kind of caught me by surprise. My interest in power lines resurfaced once again. This time, not only did my interest in power lines resurface once again, but I really became interested in power lines. And this interest continued and continued. On the way to rowing practices, I used to look at every power line, and I learned every component on the pole and what this component on the poles of power lines do. I made up my own power utility company and designed my own custom power line specs for it. This made my interest in power lines continue to last indefinitely. Whenever I looked at a power line such as the ones on the way to rowing practice, I used to make a mental note that the specific pole looked like in my imaginary power utility and how this would differ from the poles I'm seeing right now. I really loved it, and this made me really love traveling even more. A several hour long road trip where most people would get bored was an endless excitement for me, because I would constantly entertain myself looking at every power line and making up my own version of it. Doing this made me feel like getting into a zone of creativity and enjoyment. This interest made me feel lucky sometimes, because I felt like this interest provided so much excitement in life from this year forward, because it made every drive to rowing practice or every road trip exciting. I would often be amazed how something so simple could bring so much excitement. I used to doodle power lines in my notebooks in class. I used to doodle them wherever I went. I started to think that I wasn't dumb anymore. I started thinking that I was starting to think that I was actually a smart person, like I did when I lived in Massachusetts. Even though I was still behind in reading, and that it took me longer to get tests done and read assignments, I did start thinking I was a smart person because I got good grades. I continued to get A's and B's through my freshman year. I almost got straight A's one time, but unfortunately I got a B in gym. I knew I had some kind of disability, but I knew I was happy to conclusion that I was at least a smart person, and I loved that. A new interest also resurfaced at this time. I got into electronics again. I remembered how much I was interested in electronics in the past, and so something compelled me to start building my own working circuit boards instead of just looking at them. I learned how to solder and read schematics. I made a circuit board out of scratch. I made a circuit board from an electronic circuit kit that my granddad gave me and rebuilt it on a prototype circuit board. I etched the board and I drew the lines, and I literally fabricated the board and I soldered the components in. When I tested it, it worked, and I showed my dad and he was impressed. I thought it was so fun. At that point, I started building tons of circuit boards. My freshman year in high school was getting really exciting. And when Christmas came along, I made 2 more circuit boards. And I was feeling like I was fitting into high school. And I felt like my life in Michigan was now starting to take a turn.